I'm intrigued to see where he goes. I think personally, I think he'll end up back in Argentina, but I've heard like places like Barcelona on the cards as well. So who knows? But it'll be sad to see him go. It's a big loss to the Premier League.
Miller, lovely cushion header. You beauty! What a head, son! What a head! Incredible! Newcastle United have pulled off one of the greatest Premier League comebacks of all time. Youngberg again, push out by Barton. Wilson! Oh! Arsenal have scored yet again in the Premiership, and this could be the most crucial goal of all.
What's everyone saying? And you're listening to the Beyond the Gaffer podcast. You're here with your boy Kaj and your co-host Thinesh and Dhillon. Before we get on to the rest of the episode, please follow us on BTG_pod on Twitter and Instagram. Now, there's been some big news this week with Sergio Aguero leaving or going to leave Man City at the end of the season. He's had an illustrious career for them, winning 4 Premier League titles. I'm going to give it over to you, Thinesh. You must be in your feels about the news.
Oh, yeah, I'm really upset, man. Like, Aguero is by far my favourite striker of the current generation. And I knew as soon as he came...
I've seen your tweets as well, isn't it? Like, yeah. I've seen your tweets.
I wish I could have said more. Like, I've just been watching compilations of him basically, like, over this last week. It's just so nice to just go back and just watch all his goals. But I think what he's brought to the Premier League is something that not many other strikers have really introduced, especially as a foreign player as well. It's not only the amount of goals he scored, but the quality and the style that he brought, I think, has just completely transformed City. So really sad to see him go, and I'm sure we'll get into more about him in the rest of the episode.
How about you, Dhillon?
Yeah, look, he's a Premier League great, isn't he? He's been in the Premier League for as long as I can remember, and I mean, you could argue 38 million well spent, right? I mean, obviously, City aren't going to make a profit on him or anything, but I mean, that 38 million has led them to 4 Premier League titles. He's led Aguero to 181 goals. I mean, it's been fascinating. I've been a bit disappointed and sad this season. Obviously, injuries have limited him. I think he's only scored 3 times. So, and it's a bit sad, but I mean, he's going to go down as one of the greatest players of all time, isn't he, in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when he first came through, I thought that was a hell of a lot of money on him. But there's that tweet, I think, from one of those famous journalists. I think I fancy Charlie Adams being a better signing.
He got
Sergio
rinsed,
Aguero,
didn't he, for that hot take?
He's got rinsed. Who was that, actually?
I can't remember his name, but I know what tweet you're talking about.
Yeah, do you remember that tweet? We need to put that. You're going to have to retweet that again,
Yeah, I will.
On Twitter. Again, follow us on BTG_pod to see that. No, I remember that. And he started off with a bang, even in the first game, right? And I think that season was probably his most iconic for obvious reasons. But what do you think when you think of Sergio Aguero? Like, what comes to mind when you think of that? Like, Thinesh?
There's so many adjectives to describe this guy, but I think most notably is that probably just a fox in the box, I'd say. Like, he's always in the right place at the right time to finish a chance or score a goal. Like, his movement is incredible. His finishing unrivaled, I think, with a lot of the other strikers that we're going to talk about. And really, when you need someone to score your goal, like City have been in a lot of situations where, you know, they might have been drawing a game or they desperately need a goal. And we know probably the best way to win a title is in that 2012 season, wasn't it? And he was there, wasn't he? He was there to pop up with that winning goal when no one thought City could ever do it. And he will always go down in history for the greatest Premier League title win ever, right? So when you think of Aguero, that's what he'll always be remembered for.
I think you can't look past that QPR goal.
It's a defining moment, isn't it?
At the end of the season.
It's a defining moment.
Yeah, do you know why it was amazing? Yeah, because I hate Manchester United, right? And the fact that they were gutted at the end when that goal went in. I think. Do you remember that moment when Sir Alex Ferguson was just he was on the verge of tears when he heard that?
Yeah, you could tell he was like, he had to hold it.
He kept checking his watch and everything, didn't he? Like,
yeah. I think I will always love Sergio Aguero for that, genuinely, because. Just for that moment alone. Because it is the greatest moment in Premier League history, bar none. I'm ranting here, Dhillon.
No, I mean, like, that moment is so iconic. So, funnily enough, I didn't actually know that he had scored at the time. So, I don't know. Thinesh knows, like, I do the Match of the Day challenge last year of the season. So, I don't know the scores. I watch a Match of the Day. And they showed the game split side by side. And I couldn't believe what I witnessed watching Match of the Day that day. It was absolutely incredible. And it was just brilliant. Like you said, we all hate United here. So it made it even sweeter for it to happen against them. And it was the only 90th minute winner he's ever scored in the Premier League. And it was Balotelli's only ever assist. Like, it was just meant to be. It was just meant to be.
It's a pretty incredible assist as well.
I know. It was the only ever assist. And it was for Aguero to score the winner to win the Premier League. Brilliant.
The strikers for City were insane that year. I think they had Carlos Tevez as well, but they had like Balotelli, only assist. Dzeko scored the equaliser goal in that game as well. He quite underrated for Man City, and of course Aguero coming in clutch as usual. It is as usual because I think we've seen over the last 10 years that his big game record is relatively undefeated. I think there's not many players, which I will argue about later on in the episode, that have a bigger big game record than him.
The amount of goals he scored in derbies against United is ridiculous. Like every derby, when they've smashed them 6-1, 6-0, like, do you know what I mean? He's always scored in those games. He'll always score the winning goals in those sort of games, and that goes to show exactly this is the kind of player you want, that City needed to take them to that next level, and they wouldn't have transformed without him.
Yeah, no.
He scored against every team he's played against except Bolton. I mean, so he's done the works in the Premier League. He's scoring against everyone he's faced. Like, I mean, and with 12 hat-tricks to his name as well, it's like he's not even just scoring one. I mean, 12 hat-tricks is the most of any player in the Premier League. So, I mean, his status is cemented.
They always felt like they came against Newcastle as well. I don't know why. Like, if you know Aguero, you know his record against Newcastle is ridiculous. And I know every time that fixture would come around, like, I would just be quaking, because if you see Aguero on the team sheet, you know that game's already done, basically.
FPL captain, that week, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He loves a goal against Newcastle. So, yeah, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, before we move on, I guess, to the rest of the episode, Thinesh, I'm going to give it to you to let everyone know about your ultimate team moment with Aguero.
Yeah, so when I was an avid FIFA Ultimate Team player, I loved Aguero so much, and that was the first season that he'd come into the Premier League. So I saved all my coins. I'd grinded the game so hard for that one moment that I could finally afford him, and that was a great moment for me, just to be able to enjoy him in the game as well after seeing him play in real life. So that was a brilliant moment for me.
All right. I guess now it'll be a good segue into looking at how he compares really against the best strikers in the Premier League. When I think of the best strikers in the Premier League, I think we can debate this, but I think it comes down to really Aguero, Henry, Shearer, and Wayne Rooney. I mean, Thinesh, I'm going to start off with you again because it's your boy Shearer, isn't it?
Alan Shearer, man, this guy is really part of the reason why I support Newcastle. What he did for the club and for the Premier League, I don't think many, if any, will match the pedigree, and I think really just showed like what hard work and determination can be coming up as a young footballer. All-time top goal scorer, goes without saying, 260 goals in 441 games with a goals to game ratio of 0.59. Won the Premier League with Blackburn in 94-95 season, and unfortunately that was only his only Premier League title, which is a bit of a shame because he definitely deserved more. And he's the only player to ever scored 100 goals with two separate clubs. He scored 148 goals with Newcastle and 112 with Blackburn, so no one, I don't think, will ever match that again. Just the way people move clubs these days, it's quite uncommon to find someone quite loyal to two teams like that. Again, I mean, the stats just go on. Golden Boot winner 3 years in a row, 20 plus goals in 7 different seasons. He is, in my opinion, the most ruthless finisher the Premier League has ever seen. He wasn't blessed with the skills of some of these other players. He didn't have some of the flair, but what he was he was so determined to score the goals. He was the complete finisher. And like he said himself, he was injured for 3 of these years. He could have easily scored 300 goals if he wanted to. So for me, he will always be the greatest Premier League striker of all time.
That's fair. I mean, Dhillon, how about you?
I mean, there's not much to debate about that. I mean, Shearer is a Premier League GOAT. I mean, he's so far ahead of Rooney, with about 58 goals or something ahead of Rooney. And his 260 goals look like it's uncatchable. I mean, at one point I thought Aguero could have done it if he stayed fit and he stayed in the Premier League for a bit longer. I mean, we'll come on to Harry Kane in a bit as well later, whether he can catch it. But I mean, he scored some goals as well before the Premier League started, so that's probably he could have scored. He could have had a few more. And like Thinesh said, he was injured for quite a lot of his time. And the fact that he was playing for Newcastle and Blackburn weren't average at the time, because Blackburn went on to win the league under Dalglish, but he could have had a transfer away to United, and assuming that did happen, he could have scored a lot more goals than he did. Like, he could have easily broken the 300 barrier. But I mean, the fact that he stayed in Newcastle,
he would be compared to like R9. Like,
I mean, he was never
R9.
quite the same kind of player. Like, R9 had the skill and the flair and the blitz. I wouldn't say Shearer had all that, but he just knew where the back of the net was. If you wanted your striker to score, like, you'd put your money on Shearer. He knew where the back of the net was. It was not, and there was nothing fancy. Like, he never scored like worldies. I mean, I remember his goal against Everton, his volley.
Oh, that's my favourite goal.
But I mean,
you say worldies. He
scored that. But his goals, you wouldn't see him do any bicycle kicks or overhead kicks or like 35, 40 yard goals. But he was a striker. He scored the goals that he needed to, and that's why he's got so many. And a striker's job is to score goals, and that's what he did.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think you can't deny what Shearer achieved. I think when you talk about the bicycle kicks and so on, and like that's where we have to come down to like Wayne Rooney. And I think for me, I think he's arguably one of the better players, a better striker in the Premier League compared to Alan Shearer. But it's not based purely down to what he is as a goal scorer. It's just more him as a player and what he offered, in that he could score goals, but also his creativity. Because a lot of his goals, he very rarely played it up front for United. He always had to play as a second striker or second fiddle to players like Ronaldo, Tevez, Van Persie, and so on. So I don't know if your thoughts on Wayne Rooney as well.
I'm a huge fan of Wayne Rooney. I mean, there's a reason why he's the second all-time top goal scorer. Because
all-time goal scorer for United as well, isn't he?
All-time goal scorer for United, all-time goal scorer for England. He has had an incredible career. I mean, playing since he was 16 years old when he burst onto the scene, and ever since then, his
first goal was against Arsenal as well.
Yeah, I remember that. Past Seaman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What a goal
that was. Special things were made.
He was a nightmare against us, to be honest.
I think people knew from that day that this kid was something special, wasn't he? And ever since then, I really feel for him, because I feel like United fans don't appreciate what he's done for the club. They'll always see people like Giggs, Scholes,
Ronaldo,
these sort of players ahead of him.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Rooney doesn't get the credit that he deserves. And literally, as Kad said, he didn't even play as an out-and-out striker all that time. And that's what makes him even better in my eyes, because the fact he coupled those 208 goals with 103 assists as well is, I can't even believe these stats. They're so good. There's very few strikers who can offer a complete package that Rooney did as well. I don't think you can argue that many strikers are as decorated in terms of the passing ability and the creativity that Rooney offered. I think Kaj will get onto what Henry did as well. But he is a big game player as well. We know how many goals he scored for United in these huge games. I mean, the overhead kick versus City will always be in my memory as one of the best derby goals I've ever seen in my life. And that goes to show, if there's a man you want for a big game, it's Wayne Rooney.
See, funnily enough, I'm one of those. I don't think I've rated Rooney during the time of playing, but purely...
Is that because he was United? Yeah, is that because of... Yeah. I had the same thing as a Liverpool fan, because he's United.
I didn't rate like Ronaldo at United. I was like, nah, he's not as good as Kaká. He's not good as all these players. But now you look back on it, yeah, he really was. You can actually appreciate the player when he doesn't play for your rivals.
When he's not scoring hat-tricks past you, you can honestly, it's a different sight.
Yeah, I think Rooney is just incredibly underrated. I think his personal life is what probably gets him a lot of flack. I think if you want to finish off the top four, in my opinion, the top one, that has to be Henry. I don't know if more needs to be said on Henry, but it's the fact that he was the most complete striker you would ever see in the Premier League. He could everything you'd want in a modern day striker or you'd want to build. He had it. He had pace. He had finishing both in left foot, right foot. He can header, but he didn't even need to. His creativity was unmatched in the fact that you can see in the 2002-03 season where he scored, I think, 24 goals and 20 assists. No players ever come close to those stats in an individual season. I think maybe Luis Suarez, which you can touch upon, Dhillon, later on. And I think only De Bruyne has come close to matching that at 20 assist records. The fact that he's got the leading assist record as a striker just tells you something of like the caliber of a player. And your thoughts?
I mean, look, the guy was Henry. When I think of Henry, and same for me as you, Kaj. Like when I think of Henry, he's the best player and the best striker in the Premier League, in my opinion. But the guy did everything he just touched, like, was just silk. The way I watched him, like, move that ball. I remember watching a game when they beat Liverpool 4-2 at Highbury, and he absolutely just ripped like Carragher to shreds. He got left for dead. I mean, the guy was just brilliant. 4 golden boots, and like I think 2 of those were like European golden shoes as well. And he won it like in 3 consecutive seasons.
He should have won the Ballon d'Or.
He lost to Nedved that season only, which was definitely robbery now that I look back on it. But the guy is a GOAT, man. Player of the year. I think he got it in back-to-back seasons as well. You can run out of words to talk about Thierry Henry. The guy was just magical, absolutely magical.
When you think of Henry, I don't think you can ever associate a shit goal with Henry. Every goal he scored was always spectacular, wasn't it? And I think when he came to the Premier League, he sort of changed the game in terms of he never stood around, waiting up front for the ball to come. He made things happen for himself. Like he would drift out wide, take people on, and there's very few strikers who can beat a man like he did. And the way he would just dribble past people, so effortless. So I don't really think there's much more to say. We know how incredible Thierry Henry was.
I know, like a stupid point I'd bring up is like, how many strikers do you know could score a goal from the halfway line? Like, and not just shoot, like even just bring the ball, go from one end to the other and score. Like he's got that in this. He got so many. I think I say so many, but the ones that come to mind are against Spurs and against Liverpool in the Invincible season. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember his goal against Liverpool.
The amount of times he ripped Jamie Carragher as well. I think there's enough to be said. I could bring up his European goals as well, but of course we're just talking solely Premier League here. And for me, he's the greatest striker in the Premier League. He's a great goal scorer, but he's a scorer of great goals as well. And that's the best way to put it for him. Okay, so then I've spoken enough about Henry, and I guess we've spoken enough about the top 4. I think we'll come back to this at the end of the episode and how we rank them and Sergio Aguero relative to that. Now we want to look at the top 10 strikers in the Premier League. Now, there's been a bit of debate between us. I'm going to start off with you, Dhillon, now. Who the remaining 5 strikers you put through for this?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with like probably one of my favourites on this list, Jamie Vardy. Now,
no order as well, right?
No order, but I want to have to touch on Jamie Vardy. Like, I mean, for me, his career it's just so special. I mean, he's the oldest player to win the Golden Boot. I think all his goals came after the age of like 27 in the Premier League. To think this guy was playing non-league football, and he's already joined the 100 goal club, and they all came after the age of 27. Like, there's very few players, I think, like him, Ian Wright. They seem to get better with age, and he just came into his own at Leicester. And obviously, he culminated that with his Premier League title in 15-16 with Leicester. And in that season, like the things he did, the goals he scored. I mean, he scored in 11 consecutive games. Like, that is incredible. Like, to deep that, we just talked about Aguero, Henry, Rooney, and Shearer, and none of those could do what Vardy did, scoring in 11 consecutive games. That is absolutely incredible. I mean,
that's up there with like one of the best moments, isn't it? In the last decade.
When he scored, I think it was against United, wasn't it? His 11th goal.
What a goal!
It was brilliant, and his record against I know the top 6 has only really come out in the last couple of seasons, but I think he's got the second most goals against the top 6. The guy is phenomenal. I mean, there's not enough words to describe Jamie Vardy. I think he'll hopefully play in the Premier League for a couple more seasons before retiring. But I'm so glad he won the Golden Boot last season. I'm glad he's got to play for England, just to touch on that. But the guy is brilliant. He's just got better with age.
There's very few strikers that have such a unique story that Vardy had. Like you said, he was a nobody basically until Leicester took a chance on him and signed him, and they weren't even in the Premier League at the time. And the way he's just adapted to the game, he's brought his own style. I think there's very few games where you look at Vardy and think he's going to score, but that's what he's all about. He will go 80 minutes in a game and not look like he's done anything, and 10 minutes later he's scored 2 goals and he's won Leicester the game, because that's what he does. He's always on alert basically when he's ready to score a goal, and that's what I think makes him so different to some of these other strikers. And I think Leicester would probably argue that he fired them to the title that season. Him and Mahrez were incredible, and that season alone will always go down in history as one of the most special Premier League title wins ever for a team that wasn't really considered at all. They'd just been relegated, pretty much in a relegation battle the season before. So.
Kaj mentioned like Aguero had the best moment in the Premier League of all time with that moment, but for me, it would be Leicester winning the Premier League. Like, nothing will top that. It was 5,000 to 1 is just, oh my God. I couldn't believe what they did.
I think it's more like best individual iconic moment, but I think it's the best achievement to have ever existed in the Premier League by far. I completely agree with Vardy being probably definitely a top 10, and it's a good segue into this in that I think he's probably been a better striker than Kane in the Premier League. Your thoughts on that? And you can shut me down now, Thinesh. Don't worry.
I will. I'm about to, because I think this guy will go down as England's best striker of all time. I think he should
have passed to Sterling.
I mean, we could go about this forever, can't we? But he will be back, I know. So Harry Kane, again, another name who was really unfamiliar to anyone when he was at Spurs. He had these sort of random loan spells, so like Leicester and Norwich. I don't think anyone really took notice of him. I don't think anyone really remembers that in his career either. But he was a guy who was just given a chance, and he took it with both arms, didn't he? 160 goals already in the Premier League in 237 games, an incredible goals to game ratio of 0.68. And in my opinion, he's probably the closest striker in terms of mould to what Shearer is, that he's purely hard work, determination, and a ruthless finisher. I know many people think that, he's a little bit of a penalty merchant and he's a bit selfish, but there's a reason why he will go down as one of the best strikers of all time, because he scores goals and he will do whatever it takes to score goals. And what I like about him more recently is that he's adapted his game now. He's realised, okay, he wasn't blessed with pace. He's not as quick as he used to be. But what he does off the ball for the team and the creativity he's now added to his games, I think genuinely he's one of the best passers in the Premier League now. I think that gets unnoticed a lot in the league. And what he does for Spurs in terms of not only the goals, but now the assists as well, he is incredible, and I really hope that he gets a big money move this season. He deserves a title. He's been very unfortunate, I think, not to have one with Spurs, and that's partly down to his teammates. I think just not playing on the level that he's currently playing at. So I really hope he gets a move, and he's only 27. I think easily he can be the second all-time top scorer. I'm pretty sure he'll break the England record as well. He's already on 34 goals. I can't wait to see what he can do in the rest of his career.
The thing is with Kane, right? Until he wins a Premier League title, he can score as many goals as he wants. He's never going to have the legacy that other strikers will. As simple as he's just going to be the guy that goes for the golden boots. Because as a player, when you end your career, the medals you want to look at aren't the golden boots. It's the Champions League, it's the Premier League, it's I wouldn't say League Cups, but maybe the World Cups. And for me, we'll see if he gets the big money move. I think he can win all those trophies, but for now, I just don't think he's going to be an iconic Premier League until he achieves that.
No, I think that's a fair argument in the sense to say, to be remembered more, he does probably need to win. Well, not even a Premier League. He needs to win something at first. He's got nothing to show for it.
All the best players have a trophy. Like in any sport, you wouldn't consider them the greatest if they didn't win those trophies. Like Jordan.
Trust me. I think it will excel his legacy if he wins something. But I don't think you can discount him from this list. I think this guy will break Shearer's record if he stays in the Premier League and if he gets his money moved to wherever he goes. I wouldn't say though he was unlucky. He's been unlucky not to win it with Tottenham, because I just don't think Tottenham have been good enough over the past couple of seasons. Their best chance was the season when Leicester went to win the league and they sort of bottled it in the Battle of the Bridge, I remember. But Kane is something else. He cannot be excluded off this list. This guy is going places. He's got the highest goals to game ratio in a single season when he got 29 goals in 30 games. And it's the third best minutes per goal ratio in Premier League history at 122. The guy is going places. The fact that he's keeping numbers, goals to games, level with Henry and Aguero just shows the level he's playing at. And this guy will go down as an absolute legend. If he can stay fit, and I think if he gets a move, say if he does move to City or somewhere this summer, the numbers he'll put up would be absolutely incredible.
This is what I don't understand. If I was on the board of City right now, and I know they're considering, a Haaland and all these sort of young players, I don't understand, why wouldn't you go for someone like Harry Kane? He's Premier League proven, coming to the prime of his career, arguably. I don't think he would probably cost as much as maybe someone like a Haaland, for example. That just seems like the obvious.
It's just the age, I guess. That's Haaland.
It's
6 years is quite a lot.
Think of it like Aguero, right? They bought him when he was 21, 22?
He was very young.
Yeah, very young.
10-year investment out of that. And with the way transfer fees are working, inflation, right? Haaland might go for more money and you're going to get less years out of him. And that's why you'd go for Haaland. The only thing is, I would say that judging briefly from looking both of the players, I think Kane suits them more It's just the age profile.
That's the only thing that I could think that goes against him. The 6-year difference is a hell of a lot of time. Like, I mean, it's a big, big difference. But I mean, like you said, if you want someone in your prime who's Premier League proven, like Guardiola, there's no reason not to go for Kane. Like, I would personally take Kane, but if they went Haaland or Mbappe or whatever, I would. You couldn't actually complain, I don't think.
I think he has to move to somewhere in the Premier League as well, doesn't he?
I still think a better fit for him is Liverpool.
I would take him, 100%. I would take him.
He does what Firmino does, but
the sad thing is he's not coming to Liverpool, so I can't even think about it. He's not coming to Liverpool.
You never know, innit? You never know. I mean, okay, we've already spoken about that. I mean, this is the top 10 Premier League striker debate. I don't want to talk about Kane, but yeah, for me, I don't think he warrants the discussion compared to all the other strikers until he's won a Premier League trophy. That's my opinion. And what gets unnoticed, I don't care if it's biased, is that he bottles it in the biggest of moments, especially against Croatian teams. Could have passed to Sterling. He could have scored against, Dinamo Zagreb, even while Spurs were crap. But no, he crashed out as usual. And he's a dirty player. So, yeah, that's my rant over for Kane. I guess there are a couple of other contentious decisions in terms of choosing the top 10. How about we go to Didier Drogba?
He didn't make my list, unfortunately. I mean, he was an honourable mention, but he didn't make my list. I mean, as good as his I just don't think his numbers quite live up to who I have on my list. But if he's included in yours, like, I couldn't begrudge that. The guy was incredible.
Wait, so who do you put in instead of him?
So I've got players such as Robin van Persie and Ruud van Nistelrooy. I've got those ahead of him. I think both of those players, I mean, Dutch delights, both of them, aren't they? Brilliant players. I mean, Van Persie, I think, is someone we all got on our lists. I don't know how I feel about, he scored some brilliant goals. I know his injury record sort of goes against him, but I guess without his United season, he wouldn't make this list. But that season he had at United when he propelled them to the league, literally single-handedly, is probably why he makes it. Yeah. I mean, Kaj, I don't know what you want to say. I know you have a bit of a sore spot towards him. Only 20 million of United signed him from Arsenal. But I mean, do you want to have a quick word on RVP?
I don't like the guy, but can't deny how good he is. I mean, I want to look at your list because you mentioned Suarez ahead of Drogba as well.
Yeah, he's on my list. I mean, Liverpool bias potentially, but oh man, the guy.
This is going to be this is where I think a lot of discussion is going to take place. All right, let's bring it back to Drogba, I guess, right? For me, it's so hard to look at him, just his Premier League exploits, without factoring what he did in the Champions League. I know we're just looking at just Premier League record here, but what he achieved in the Cups, in the FA Cups, in the League Cups, in the Champions League was just phenomenal. And he might not have the best goal ratio in throughout a calendar, throughout the campaign. But when it came to the big games, there's no striker, I think even in the top four, in between Aguero, Henry, Shearer, and actually maybe Aguero, that you would want in a big game other than Drogba. I don't know. Your thoughts, Thinesh?
Yeah, I really like Drogba. I think he's something very different, again, to some of these other players where just his presence alone, he brings so much fear factor, I think, to opposition. If I was an opposition team playing against Drogba, I would be scared for my life because, this guy will bully you all game, basically. And that's what he brought. He might not have necessarily scored as many goals as some of these other teams, but the off-the-ball work was really good. And I think he brought other players, like he made other players better, basically. Like a lot of Lampard's goals was just the link-up play that he made with Drogba, basically. So I'm a big fan of Drogba. He would be in my top 10 list. Again, not necessarily for the goals, but just his influence for Chelsea. I think he was so influential for them. And like Kaj said, as big game players go, again, he'd always score the big game goals in the FA Cups, the League Cups, Champions League. I mean, he's won plenty of Premier Leagues with Chelsea as well. Back-to-back, like, incredible. A really good season, I think, and he'll always go down again as one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere, I think he got like 40 goals and assists in 51 games against the top 4 or 5, which was the biggest teams there before we include like the Man Cities, the Leicesters and so on. The way I know he terrorized Arsenal, he was a nightmare. And yeah, I think he brought rise to a lot of what the modern strikers are in terms of having great hold-up play and bringing others into play. And he just had everything in his locker. And when it comes to analysing the best strikers in the Premier League, I know we can look at goals, but I think what we should also consider is is that player able to do things that other players just cannot? And that's what I analyze Drogba in, and he just does things that I don't think any players can when it comes to especially in the biggest moments. So yeah. So we spoke enough about Drogba. I think there's a lot we could still talk about, but I think the main contentious decisions now, I think, are... So in my list, I've got Van Persie, Drogba, Vardy, Bergkamp, Suarez, and Kane, right? I know I've been crapping on Kane for a bit, but I think he should be top 10. What's the rest of your list, Thinesh? And then we could go through some of the names on that.
Yeah, I guess one name we haven't really mentioned is Andy Cole, and I think this summarizes pretty much what his career is like. He scored all these goals, but he gets overlooked time and time again. I mean, obviously he was way before all of our times, but I mean, just looking at the stats and what he's done in his career, he's had a pretty incredible career. And again, he's one of these no-nonsense strikers. His mind is always on focusing on scoring goals, and that's what he did. He will go down as the third all-time top goal scorer with 187 goals in 414 games. Not necessarily has one of the best goal-to-games ratio with 0.45, but he was the fastest player to 50 goals. An incredible season with Newcastle before he got his move with 34 goals. And that his United spell, that's where he really came into his prime. I mean, he won 5 titles with them, an amazing career, and this goes without saying, but he didn't score any penalties in that time. He didn't take penalties, basically. So all his goals were basically pure open play goals, basically. So again, a brilliant player, and I think it goes without saying he has to make this list purely because of his goal scoring record.
Yeah, he's one of those players that can easily get overlooked, but he would always make the list regardless of what happens, I think. I mean, in that 93-94 season, 34 goals, albeit, 42 game season back then, he got 34 goals and 13 assists. That is incredible. He was the only player to ever outright top the assist and goal chart in a single Premier League season. Outright for both is just, oh man. 34 goals and 13 assists. That season at Newcastle, man, if he had been there when Shearer was there, that would have been absolutely devastating.
Oh my god!
Oh my! If he didn't make his move, I know, a couple of seasons out. But if he was there when Shearer was there, they would have absolutely done bits of that Newcastle side. But yeah, he went to United.
Would he gone for the title?
Yeah, look, you never know. Look, Newcastle were close a couple of times during the 90s, and they sort of faded away, especially under their season under Keegan. But if it was at United, along with Dwight York, where he absolutely tore up the Premier League, and he's got his 5 Premier League medals to his name. Incredible player, incredible.
No, fair. I don't think there's much for me to add because he was really before my time. But so I think I am just going to move on to the other strikers. Who I really want to compare? I want to compare Van Persie and Suarez, because the reasons I think they're on this list isn't because of longevity, is about pure impact on the Premier League when they were at their prime, right? Van Persie only had 2 or 3 seasons at the top in the Premier League, but he won United the Premier League, and he was one of the best strikers in the world, and he had everything in his locker. And it's the same with Suarez, right? So how do you two compare them, especially to the rest of the Premier League strikers, all-time greats?
I mean, they're both on my list. Suarez is actually the only player, along with Kane, who hasn't actually won a title on my list. But for me, it was the greatest individual season I witnessed from a player in my time. That 13-14 season. I mean, I know Liverpool finished second that season, but this was an average Liverpool side. We're not talking about the same Liverpool side that won the league last season. It was nowhere near as good. And it was Suarez who literally carried us to that second place position and the brink of the title. Sturridge as well, and Sterling. But that Suarez that season, my goodness me, 31 goals in 33 games. At the time, a record number of goals scored before Salah broke it. And I think he would have broken Shearer and Cole's record of 34 goals in that season. He missed 5 games at the beginning of the season because of his racism ban. And I think if he had played in those games, he would have broken the record. The guy he was responsible for a third of all the hat-tricks in that season. That is disgusting. The guy was just, that season, I honestly believe if he went to Arsenal at the end of that season with that audacious £40 million and £1 bid, Arsenal would have won the league the following season. Because that's what they were lacking at the time. He was just incredible. This guy Suarez, man, it was a shame he wasn't there for I think his longevity sort of goes against him slightly because he wasn't there for that long. I know we sold him not too long after, but that guy, oh man, that season I watched him play, he just took Liverpool another level. The boys just stick to his feet. I remember a goal against Newcastle. I think you remember. Thinesh.
I was literally going to bring that
he
up.
He just spun Colaccini, and he just took that ball down, and oh man. And he rifled it. Exactly. And he scored 3 hat-tricks that season. Like, I mean, guy was brilliant. So he had, for me...
They were all against Norwich. They always felt like
I think he got Norwich. He scored. He's going against West Brom. I think it was Cardiff as well. But...
So he was a bit of a... What is it? What's the term? When he just scores against just the small teams? Because I'm pretty sure his big game record wasn't that great.
I don't think it was great, but like you can only score against what's in front of you, right? And that's what he did. I mean, the best season I've ever witnessed. The guy was brilliant. And then it was just a shame he didn't win the league that season with Liverpool.
He's a character. There's no doubt about it.
He's a character.
He's a character, no doubt about it. And like Dhillon said, his ability and his finishing, the link-up play that season, like Dhillon said, with Suarez and... not Suarez, with Sturridge and Sterling... Yeah, incredible. And I wish he did stay in the Premier League a little bit longer. It was a bit of a shame towards the end, obviously, with the off the ball antics, what happened and stuff. Because like Dylan said, I think he could have gone on to hit 150 plus goals quite comfortably. So it's a real shame, and he will always be considered again amongst the greats. Personally, for me, I wouldn't include him purely because he'd only been in the Premier League for 3 seasons. And I think if we're going to consider someone as all time, they've really got to be playing a lot longer than that and doing it over a long period of time. And I mean, it's not really it shouldn't really be a big factor, but the stuff that he does off the ball as well, I don't really like it at all, and I can't put someone like that in my top 10 for that reason.
Yeah, but you can't analyze the greatest strikers just based on like your personal you have to look at what he does.
No, I said pitch, I know exactly. I mean, that's not. But so, I think the longevity thing for me is the key reason. If he was in the league for more seasons, and if he added a title to that, he has to be there, I think. But it's a bit of a shame he was only there for 3 seasons.
Yeah, no. I agree with all of that. I wonder if we could ever find a stat on how many nutmegs he had in the Premier League, because I remember there's so many. That was like he was like the best in the Premier League when it came to nutmegging.
It was always like in the box when there was like 10 people as well. He would somewhere get through exactly when there was no way. Basically, goals
against Norwich, right? He took the ball off him. He nutmegged him straight away and then scored with like the outside of his boot. I think you might remember that goal, Dylan, more than me. The only thing is, I would say, is that I think Van Persie was a better striker than him, just in the Premier League. I think Suarez had a better career overall. But I think when you look at complete strikers, I think Van Persie, the shame with Van Persie was always injuries, because I think his talent warranted being in the top 4, because he had everything in his locker, right? His movement was insane. He wasn't obviously the most electric striker like Henry, but he had his pace was the equivalent of someone like, say, okay, not Aguero, but maybe like Rooney, or a bit faster than Rooney, right? His movement was insane. He could head the ball. His left foot. I will put a case out there for the best left foot in the Premier League that I've seen. Unless Messi came into the Premier League, I think it's the best left foot I've ever seen in the Premier League. It was a wand. He could score an incredible amount of free kicks from there, and his technique when it came to volleys was incredible. I don't think I've ever seen many strikers better than him.
I was going to say, when you think of volleys, you think Van Persie, don't you? All the spectacular goals are pretty much volleys, basically, from ridiculous, not only angles, but just distances
as well. Man. The goal against Charlton, I think it was in 2006, probably my favourite Van Persie goal. That gets underrated. I don't know how he jumped so high to hit that ball up there, but his injury record is the one thing. Like I honestly believe he should be up like 180 goals. He should be at the level of Aguero, but his injuries just like they just plagued him, and it frustrated. Like he had 2 amazing seasons, and let's be honest, would he be on this list if he didn't score? Didn't go to United? It's debatable.
Yeah, that's the case I put against Kane, right? And it's fair, but he's won it. But I know that I watched. But there's so much to Van Persie's game that was just incredibly underrated in terms, because it's not just his finishing ability. He could also create, like you talk about Kane being able to create. Van Persie's close control and creativity was insane. But the thing is, there's so much I could say about Van Persie's, but I think we kind of have to finish this episode, really. I think it makes sense to really judge or rank our top 4, because I think it's too debatable about who's going to finish between like 5th.
Yeah, we'll post our teams on Twitter or something, and you guys can decide, who has the best top 10.
Yeah. Vote for it on BTG _pod. But no, before we go to rank our top 4, Thinesh, do you want to put some honourable mentions right
Well,
now?
I'm sure we'll do that properly in a few other episodes, but there's some of the more recent strikers that we've had. Like, I think we were talking off air, like Berbatov, incredible player. I was a big fan of like Dzeko, Diego Costa, those type of players. I wish they'd played in the Premier League a little bit more, and I think they could have been up there as well. So there's been some really amazing strikers, and like we said, even narrowing it down to 10 was so difficult. I think we've been struggling all week to do that. So why don't we rank our top 4? I think we all agree that probably the 4 are going to be Shearer, Henry, Aguero, and Rooney. Dill, I'm going to start with you. What would be your rankings? For those
so
4?
I'll do my number 4, and then I'll be interested to see your number 4. So at number 4, I've got Wayne Rooney out of my 4. Who have you got at number 4?
I'll put Shearer.
Fair enough.
Gone for Shearer. Excuse me.
And Thinesh, what about you? What about you?
Okay, I'm going to come back to that. I really struggled here because I think Aguero and Rooney very similar, but I agree with you. I've gone for Rooney at 4.
Cool. All right. I'll go on, Thinesh. You go in number 3 next, then.
For 3, I've gone for Aguero, but I do kind of want to put him at 2. But I'm going to say 3 for now. I think the 5th Premier League title is a game changer. I think
Fair
he puts
enough.
him up there.
I've got him at number 3 as well. Kaj?
I've got Aguero at number 3.
So he's in the same position on our lists. Okay, so I'll go for number 2. So at number 2, this was close because I've actually gone back and forth a lot of times over this. Like, it changes. So it's close, but there's not a lot to separate them. At number 2, I've just got Alan Shearer.
Catch?
See, I'm putting Wayne Rooney there. I'm judging players more on how complete they are, and I think Rooney offered a lot more towards the team as well than Shearer, and that's why he's my second pick.
I think this is a pretty obvious one. I've gone for Henry, and again, that's nothing against Henry, but I have to back my boy Shearer at number 1.
So that means that me and Kaj both have Henry at number 1, and then finish with Shearer at 1. But again, like, for me, there's very little to separate Henry and Shearer. For me personally, it is a fine margin. Like, I just think when I watch Henry play, it's just magical, man. I couldn't get tired of watching him play. When he puts on those gloves, that dark Arsenal maroon shirt, I just know that I'm in for a good game, and Henry was going to do bits. His record is just unbelievable. And for me, the best foreign import the Premier League has ever seen. So yeah, that's why he would be my number 1.
Yeah, no, I think I've said enough about Henry, but I just think when it comes to analysing the best strikers in the Premier League, I think you have to offer more than just goals, and Henry had that, and it's the same reason why I put Rooney in number 2. And it's also one of the reasons why I think it's contentious where you could put Bergkamp in the top 10 strikers, because he didn't have the greatest goals compared to the other strikers, but the things he could do to a ball, like, I don't think any other striker can, and it's one of the reasons why Cantona is considered the top 10 by a lot of people as well. But yeah, no, I definitely think Henry is the best striker to have ever played in the Premier League. And
like Dhillon said, I think any of these you can make a case for being number 1. I kind of see the Henry argument just purely because he just won more titles, didn't he? Like, I feel for Shearer in that respect, that I wish he could have won a title with Newcastle in his boyhood club. Just didn't quite work out, but no one's even close to him in terms of goals, so he will always be my number 1.
And that's fair, right? That's what you can do. That's the beauty of this debate.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, that wraps up this episode. And last thoughts on Aguero before Thinesh closes off?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know what? I'm intrigued to see where he goes. I think, personally, he'll end up back in Argentina, but I've heard like places like Barca on the cards as well. So who knows? But it'll be sad to see him go. It's a big loss to the Premier League.
What I'd love to see is another spell back at Atletico. I think that would just be so fitting to like bookend his career. When he started off with Diego Forlan, like, so I remember watching him and
Suarez and Aguero up front.
Incredible. Hopefully not with Suarez, but like, you know, Aguero being the main man basically, and yeah, it would be great to see him play in Europe for a little bit more before he settles down in Argentina.
Yeah, just hope he stays fit.
Yeah, fair. I think the Premier League's going to be going to miss him a lot, and we'll see which striker in the next decade will match his achievements, or if they can, or be close to it. But yeah, no, Thinesh, I'm going to leave it to you to end the episode.
Nice one. Thanks, Kaj. As always, thanks for listening, everyone. If you've made it this far, make sure you're following us on all our socials at BTG_pod, and follow us on Spotify, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're listening over there. See you next week.